All right, let's continue to this now. Today marks a historic first, the celebration of the International Day of Women and Girls of African Descent. It's a day to honor their remarkable contributions to society while also acknowledging the unique challenges they face, often carrying a double burden of both racism and sexism. Across the globe, events are being held to celebrate resilience, amplify voices, and call for greater equity. To speak more on this, let's now welcome Mahlatse Ramoroka, Coordination Specialist at United Nations Women South Africa. Mahlatse, thank you so much for your time and good afternoon to you. So, talk to us more about this day. The understanding, of course, is that this day falls within the broader international decade for people of African descent.
Correct, and thank you for having me. So today marks the International Day of Women and Girls of African Descent. And how this came about was through the adoption of the United Nations General Assembly, which adopted the resolution on the 13th of August 2024. And it established the 25th of July as to be commemorated as the International Day of Women and Girls of African Descent. Now, in the main, what the day tries and attempts to do is to recognize the significant contributions of women and girls of African descent to society's development, but also while acknowledging the challenges and the multiple and intersecting forms of discrimination that they continue to experience. So the day is commemorating the global fight against slavery, against racism, and seeks to promote gender equality, as well as highlight the history and the culture of women and girls of African descent.
And in South Africa, do you have any specific initiatives or even partnered with perhaps organizations that really put to the core and to the fore women and children's issues?
Yes, we do have programs that highlight this work, well, not specifically on today, but we have sustainable programs that are focusing on entrepreneurship, that are focusing on women, peace and security, ending violence against women and girls. And I think more broadly, the UN Women Family in South Africa is charting the path in terms of providing thought leadership as well as programmatic efforts that are speaking to women and girls of African descent.
And I want to look at the South African context here too. When you think about iconic, events like the 1956 Women's March that essentially reinforce the long history of just Black women's leadership and even resistance, how does that intersect with this day, especially when you look at just some of the most pressing systemic structural challenges, you mentioned some, that women and children still face today?
So there's definitely a lot of overlapping issues there in the context of the women of 1956, but also in the context of how that is mirrored in what is called the Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action. So from a global to a national perspective, there are similarities. And what are the similarities, you might ask? I think Black women continue to experience a lot of multiple and intersecting discrimination. And this is manifest in the high rates of poverty, barriers to education that they continue to experience, be it in the context of higher education and learning, limited access to quality healthcare. And this also touches on the issues of sexual and reproductive health rights and the access thereof. I can name quite a number and really a plethora of them. But in the main, even if we speak to the issues of representation, but this also intersects with different pockets of the Sustainable Development Goals. And really there we see a very direct global link to how South African women are experiencing the world, but the discrimination and how widespread it is in the South African context, regionally, as well as globally.
And I mean, one of the things that we know, especially when we talk about days like this, is that most oftentimes the success of women, women being able to break those barriers, women being able to elevate themselves even to be a president of the country, for the first time on the African continent, for instance. Those are always mirrored and overshadowed by issues of, gender-based violence, inequality, as we've seen, racism, sexism. How do we even begin then as women, particularly in South Africa, to start, elevating those success stories?
I think it's important for us to really adopt a twin track approach, one that acknowledges that we are grappling with issues of gender-based violence, of unequal access to education, to healthcare, to political representation. But in the same vein, we need to equally acknowledge the wins and the gains. Some of the pushback that we've been seeing against the gender equality agenda really seeks to hone in on the wins that we need to continue to preserve. Because when we don't do that, what we end up doing is, number one, as you articulate, shine a light on the regression and the lost gains, but also we're not creating room to create sort of a mirror image of what is attainable and what can we do to help women and girls achieve better livelihoods. So if we are indeed going to be honest about what it is that we're keeping, we need to be honest about the twin track approach that really acknowledges what has worked, the gains that we've made, and preserves the gains, but equally acknowledges what isn't working. I also think we need to, in that same vein, create accountability through data collection. Because when we do not counter the problem, it really disenables us actually from addressing it. So it's very important that we use data as an accountability mechanism to push forward the needle, but also to acknowledge that women are really breaking glass ceilings and breaking generational cycles that previously existed around access or their inability thereof.
Mahlatse, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but as we wrap up our conversation, what for you personally just brings you a personal hope and inspiration when you reflect especially on the resilience of women and girls of African descent in South Africa?
Oh, I think for me personally, I continue to deeply be moved in this work because of the resilience of women, but also the potential of young women, especially in educations and skills training. We continue to see women step into what was historically male-dominated spaces in the education context, but also in the corporate space. I think that continues to give us hope to say that there is prospects, number one, of us not only shattering glass ceilings, but creating sustainability in the opportunities that we are building and creating for young women, but also to build legacy work that not only is going to end in this generation. I mean, as you initially said when you started, we always refer to historic women. We refer to the Beijing Declaration of 1995. We refer to the women of 1956. We refer to so many of them. So it really is encouraging to see how, as we break ceilings, we are working towards creating sustainability as well.
Absolutely. Mahlatse, thank you so much for your time and for speaking to us. Mahlatse Ramoroka is Coordination Specialist at the United Nations Women South Africa, speaking to us there about the inaugural International Day of Women and Girls of African Descent.